All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving deep into the French Revolution and the idea of the nation. We're looking at a literal seismic shift in history, the one that birthed the modern recipe for the nation-state. Now, we often take the whole concept of a nation for granted today, right? But this idea that a group of people actually share a common identity, a history, and a destiny didn't just magically exist since the dawn of time. It was actively forged, and it took immense struggles, some absolutely brilliant political engineering, and sweeping reforms to make it happen.
So, put yourself in the shoes of the French revolutionaries for a second. Imagine the monumental task in front of you. You've just toppled a deeply entrenched political order. But honestly, overthrowing a king is only step one. The real headache, and the question we are exploring today, is how do you invent a nation from scratch? How on earth do you take millions of people spread across this vast territory, speaking totally different dialects, living under different local rules, and build a shared, unified national identity from the ground up?
Section 1. From Monarch to Citizens. This was the massive paradigm shift that kicked the whole process off in 1789.
Look at the stark contrast we have here. Prior to 1789, France was your classic territorial state, but it was completely under the thumb of an absolute monarch. Basically, the king was the state, period. But the political and constitutional earthquake of the revolution led to this monumental transfer of sovereignty. Power shifted away from the monarchy and went directly into the hands of a body of French citizens. The revolution boldly proclaimed for the first time that it was the people who would henceforth constitute the nation and shape its destiny.
Moving on to Section 2, Forging a National Identity. Because, just declaring a new nation on paper, that didn't really cut it. They had to actively engineer a shared identity, almost like building a massive modern brand.
To pull this off, they actually changed the everyday vocabulary of society. Right out of the gate, they introduced ideas like la patrie, the fatherland, and le citoyen, the citizen. And these weren't just catchy buzzwords. They were deeply powerful concepts designed to hammer home the idea of a united community. Think about it. By calling someone a citizen rather than a subject, you're explicitly stating that they enjoy equal rights under a shared constitution. Every single person was meant to understand they were now equal parts of a unified whole.
This quickly built into a rapid-fire recipe for a unified nation. They needed a new logo, so out went the royal standard, and in came the tricolor flag. They took the old Estates General, turned it into an elected body, and rebranded it the National Assembly. They literally wrote the soundtrack of the nation with new hymns and oaths. But it wasn't all symbolic. They made incredibly practical changes too. Uniform laws, abolishing internal customs, and standardizing weights and measures, which, fun fact, is actually how we got the metric system we still use today. They even pushed back against regional dialects, promoting Parisian French as the common language, to completely harmonize the country.
Section 3. Exporting the Revolution. Once the national machine was humming, the revolutionaries decided it was their destiny to look past their own borders and take these ideas on the road.
Check out this visual. It's the cover of a 1798 German almanac designed by a journalist named Andreas Redman. It brilliantly captures the vibe of the era. You've got the image of the French Bastille being stormed by a revolutionary crowd, placed right next to a similar fortress representing despotic rule in the German province of Cassel. When news of the events in France reached cities across Europe, students and the educated middle classes were completely inspired. They started setting up their own Jacobin clubs. And their campaigns actually paved the way for the French armies, which poured into Holland, Belgium, Switzerland, and Italy in the 1790s, carrying that spark of nationalism abroad.
Section 4. The Napoleonic Code. Because you absolutely cannot discuss this era without talking about Napoleon Bonaparte, who paradoxically took these revolutionary principles and used them to make his new empire incredibly efficient.
This brings us to the Civil Code of 1804. This document was a total game changer. It swept away all privileges based on birth, legally established equality before the law, and secured the right to property. But Napoleon didn't just keep this code for France. He exported it to the regions under his control, like the Dutch Republic, Switzerland, Italy, and Germany. He totally abolished the feudal system, meaning peasants were finally freed from serfdom and manorial dues. He removed guild restrictions in towns and improved transport. For peasants and artisans, this new efficiency was a massive breath of fresh air. And amazingly, this very code still forms the basis of civil law in dozens of countries today.
Section 5. Liberators or Oppressors. Well, history is rarely a simple story of progress, is it? We have to ask, were the French armies liberators bringing the light, or just a new breed of oppressors? The local reactions across Europe trace this fascinating and honestly pretty tragic devolution. Step 1.
In many places like Holland, Switzerland, Milan, and Warsaw, the French armies were initially welcomed with open arms as harbingers of liberty. But then came step 2. Reality set in. The local populations soon realized that these shiny new administrative arrangements did not actually mean true political freedom, which leads to step 3, that initial excitement violently turning into hostility. The heavy demands of the French military machine just completely outweighed the administrative perks. Conquered territories were hit with increased taxation, strict censorship, and worst of all, forced conscription into the French armies to fuel even more conquests across Europe.
All of which leaves us with this final, profound contradiction to ponder. The French Revolution gave the world the very blueprint of a unified nation-state, built on the sovereignty of the citizens and equality before the law. But as those ideas marched across Europe, they mostly did so at the end of a bayonet. So can a nation fundamentally built on the premise of liberty be authentically exported through military conquest and imperialism? It's a massive tension that defined the 19th century, and it continues to echo in global politics today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it leaves you eager to dig even deeper into the incredible complexities of our shared history. Catch you next time.